I've been working on a super simple guest mode for CueCam 4.0. So I basically want to use CueCam to do little interviews and things like that, and without kind of overcomplicating it too much. It's based on screen sharing. So here's how it will work. So you just kind of use your meeting software of choice, like connect to a meeting of some sort. Here is me, and then here is your meeting window. As this is definitely a real meeting window and not just a AI generated face. No, so I just wanted to use this for testing to make it a bit clearer, so that you can see it says Zoom window. Of course, it's a Zoom window. So we go next. This is how you do it. So you add guest window, pick window, and then just like grab the Zoom window, right? And then you see it's sort of like cropped in a bit funny, but just going to the window and changing the size of it kind of then means it sort of changes that crop there. And then I'll try and do something a bit cleverer with that. But the idea is you just sort of bring that in and it does the side by side for you. And then sort of like lets you turn it on and off. And then you just like record that or live stream that. So, does that just work for one guest? No, because it's sharing the Zoom window. So we can just lean into Zoom's spotlighting features or whatever your video conferencing software is always going to be switching to the speaking person. So we just kind of like lean on that and don't try and be too clever inside CueCam. And so then you can have lots of people in the conversation if you want. The downsides are that window Chrome. I'm gonna. You can do like person detection. I think probably with core image I can crop out the window Chrome if I want to. But I think this is a worthwhile trade-off just for the other simplicity, really. Even if it shows a little bit, I don't think it's the end of the world. Complication is screen sharing. Is not quite as straightforward once because with CueCam I'm already doing screen sharing in other parts of the app, so it's a bit more complicated. And then just audio feedback to the guests. So I'm going to talk about the problems there. So when I do the screen sharing, as I showed you, I'm using the macOS share this window thing. So that causes problems if you want to share more than one source. So it turns out actually, so I actually like spent a few days, a couple of weeks going, is this actually going to be possible? And then I found this kind of not very documented API on SC content sharing picker screen capture kit. Basically, if you change this number, then it changes the behavior of the picker so that it doesn't just replace the one. So this meant that guest mode was actually possible. So that was quite handy. But if you look at the documentation for this, it tells you nothing. But the other thing was like, how do I avoid guests hearing themselves? So the way CueCam currently works is if I was recording the guest, then that guest's voice would get sent back to them via the virtual mic and they'd hear themselves echoing in their headphones. And the usual workaround would be to select my mic directly in Zoom. So not to use CueCam audio in Zoom, just use my direct mic. But then I might not be in sync anymore with my video. And I also then I can't we can't watch a video together, or I can't show them something with sound, which is kind of a deal breaker for me. So I sort of jumped in and made, I realized I needed a pretty big change. So first I'll kind of show you the current architecture. So the video, I'll take the thing. So basically the video kind of comes from Zoom, gets mixed in here, and then just sort of sent back to Zoom. And so like my camera feed is now the broadcast thing. But then over here, I'm sort of mixing all this stuff in. So I'm taking, so I've got my microphone going into one channel, maybe the video going into another channel. And then the Zoom is obviously having to go into this guest channel. So then that all currently just goes into the virtual mic, which goes straight back to Zoom and then into the recorder. So the way that the recording works is an XPC process, which is a separate process, because it was just sort of like simpler to think about if I could just like send it to another process, take the mic and camera like anything else would. But to change this, so now we still have the same Zoom video feed kind of coming back and forth, but now I take my mic and whatever else is playing, put that into the virtual microphone, which goes back to Zoom so that the other person can hear me and can see the video. But then I take in the recorder, I take the video directly from Zoom now, and it's not going via the virtual camera anymore. And then I take a mix here, and I take the Zoom audio, mix that with everything else here, and then send that to the recorder, and that all works in the same process. So it's a quite a different architecture to I wonder how I could just quickly show you. So sort of like the before is I just have a virtual mic and a virtual camera and in another process. So this could be QuickTime, and you just record it. But like I was just basically firing up a mini QuickTime before, but then that doesn't work. So now instead I've got to like, when the virtual camera is rendered, I've got to like actually just grab that and turn that into an AV asset writer pixel buffer, put that in, and then I've also got to take my sort of audio mix internally and sort of branch that off, and all sort of within the same process, and then send something different to the virtual mic. The benefits to this though are this was the first time I tested it working. I was like, oh god, there's no arbitrary delay before it starts recording. The moment with CueCam, because it's got to fire up that external process, it's a bit unpredictable how long it's going to take to actually start recording, which can be a bit difficult. If, you know, in a TV studio, you'd get 10, 9, 8, 7, 3. But in CueCam, you just get like, wait, and then it goes. So it means I can finally solve that problem. And the other thing is the audio. CueCam records layered video layers, so it can record the pencil output separate from the background, separate from the slides. I think the slides aren't working at the moment, but separate from a video that you're playing. But it didn't separate out the sound, and I didn't know how I was going to do it. But now I can use the same technique to sort of separate out the audio that I've learned how to do for this this new thing that I'm doing here. So first thing, get rid of this video recording surface and the live streaming service. So that deleted those targets, which is quite nice. And then sort of the key to this is I need a, excuse me, a circular buffer, audio engine circular buffer, which is basically a rolling buffer of audio coming from my rendering. So I've got real-time audio rendering thing, which has to be separate to the user interface, because there's so many ways it can go wrong. I've run out of water, but I don't want to start again. So what this buffer is, we basically have this rolling buffer, right? And then as we mix that audio in, it's creating these buffers, and then it's just adding those in. Add another one, add another one, and then when it runs out of space, it just kind of like stops, unless something on the other side, which is looking at this pointer here, sort of takes them out like one at a time. It goes to this one, goes to this one, and basically this playhead is just kind of like rotating around continuously. So it's just basically somewhere that I can access the latest audio away from the real-time audio thread, so that I can start writing it to a file. This is my this is in my audio renderer. So the way I'm splitting it out is I've got this submix. So at this point on the context stack, I've got all of the I've got everything except the guest audio mixed in. And so then if I've got that virtual mic output, then I just duplicate that and then render that to the virtual mic, and also like do the meter, and then I take all the ones that weren't included in the virtual mic, basically the guest mic, process that, and then stick that, grab that output buffer. So that's the sort of real buffer. That's the one that we actually want to record, and then enqueue that into that circular buffer. So that goes into that master output ring buffer, which I get a pointer to elsewhere. And so now that process of draining that buffer looks like this. So we sort of set it on a timer every 10 milliseconds. Basically grab that master output buffer, which is assigned sort of like when the audio engine fires up. So we've got a pointer to that. And then we just use this A circ. So this is a C call. So it's in Swift, but it's actually like C. So it's like checking if there's anything in there. It grabs the next buffer list, and then sort of like just it essentially just calls this. I've got a master movie writer and a delay calculator writer. It adds that buffer list, number of frames, timestamp, and so this is and then just like consumes that buffer. Is that the right way around? I think so. Oh, maybe I've done that the wrong way around. Master output buffer. Interesting. No, this just gets the next buffer list, doesn't it? And then says that's finished. Anyway, um, now here's my video writer, well, my audio writer. So this gets that buffer list. We've got an audio input into our AV asset writer. If you know, like look up AV asset writer, but we have to sort of do some jiggery pokery to figure out the actual the timing of it. So when we first get one, we figure out the start time, and so then we sort of like I'm sort of mixing syntactic sugar with C calls there, but we basically grab the timing and then use this CM sample buffer set data buffer from audio buffer list. So actually, sort of this makes it quite easy. This CM sample buffer thing that Apple gives you, this lets you turn into that and then just append that to the audio input of the asset writer. So actually, not too bad in the end, but as usual, like Claude led me up the garden path when it came to the finer details, because when I initially asked, I was like, hey, you know, what would it look like? I managed to kind of like beat it into submission until it kind of like gave me something that made sense and that wouldn't mess up my audio pipeline. So we sort of came to something, but then it's this was my favorite. Like it saw this, like if the virtual mic is available, then make a copy and then like mix that down. And it goes, oh, one question. If it's false, then you skip the AE render context, but you still have the duplicated buffer sitting on the stack. He's like, what? So if this is false, we still have the duplicated on. How's that? No, if this is false, we never get here, so we don't do the AV. You know, I'm like, God, like I know it's not good with like wider context, but this is like the context couldn't have been more localized. Yeah. Oh, look, you're right. Sorry, it's inside the if, so there's no orphan buffer. The stack is clean either way. Yeah, nice one. So this is like just when you think that AI can't be stupider. Okay. No, I love it. It's handy in so many ways, but like it's also a fast idiot. One, two, three, four, and it gave me this was oh by the way this was the solution when I used it. It was trying to like it gave me this overcomplicated solution for dealing with the audio buffers. So this was the first like result. Testing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Testing. So completely out of sync and completely crazy sounding. It wanted to do all this bullshit. Like, it just didn't know about that thing. I was like, oh, you haven't heard of like this thing? No, I was overcomplicating it massively. Show me. Yeah, all right. And so I ignored it, found a GitHub gist, did the same thing. So just, this was the result. It was about 4 lines of code instead of 40 broken lines of code, which Claude gave me and often does. So I do find Claude useful for thinking stuff through, helping me visualize what's going on. I was like, give me a like a sort of. Sometimes I just ask it to give me like dumb it down with kind of a metaphor. So like, and it's talking about chefs and kitchens. I was like, okay, so just so I can try and understand what I'm dealing with, but then. You just can't rely on the details being correct. You always have to like actually know what you're doing there. They don't understand, but they help you to understand sometimes. So so that's sort of working, but I did get it working. But I was on a podcast yesterday with Martin McKenna asked me if it was possible to match the guests' framing and colors. He was like, "Oh, I wish I could do this," and I was like, "Doesn't sound too bad." I thought I'd have a quick crack at it before I made this video today. So I asked Claude how hard it would be, and it kind of said like it could generate a camera LUT by comparing the histograms of the 2 images, which sounded like feasible to me. I don't know what the details look like, but I thought, okay, well, if I can just kind of set you up to try an algorithm, let's try that. So I added a little, match main camera levels with a sparkle wand, and then this then said, create guest LUT, right? So that's the button that you click on, and then this is in real-time Swift. All that is needed to add that filter to the guest. So once I had that guest LUT assigned, I would just be able to like add that in just to correct the color. So that is just beautiful. Like it's just being able to throw stuff like this into the rendering pipeline with just no headaches there. Like this is a solved problem for me. And then I sort of created a harness to kind of grab the relevant images. So for the camera, you know, I needed my main camera image, but I needed that to be, you know, with the camera light that I have applied, because I have a logarithmic camera thing, and any color corrections or anything like that. So we have to sort of like, so what I do is I actually fire up a real-time renderer with a root view. This camera view is a real-time Swift view, so it's just, it works the same way in the main renderer, but I just sort of give it the registering thing, and then it can give me an image by calling renderer.render. So that's pretty straight. You know, I was able to just reuse an awful lot of stuff and make sure that I was getting the correct source image. And then for the guest source, I can just kind of go to my source registry, which has all of the sort of like different video sources in the app. Just grab the guest source thing for the guest image. And so then I just handed that off to Claude and said, look, here's the context. You've got this async function. All you've got to do is like figure out what that LUT is going to be. And it just gave me a lot of complicated code that I didn't bother reading. And I messed with my, you know, I sort of made this, I just sort of like dimmed out the levels, lowered the contrast to just try and see, just try and make them a bit worse. And so this is it's got to try and match this color profile to this color you know, it's got to change this by to sort of look a bit more like this. And so I clicked for the first time, and oh yeah, okay, no good. That was not great. Not a great start. What are you doing? And then like a lot of back and forth now, sort of like trying to see if it could figure it out for me. It gave me a lot of like fake news coming out of this thing. But you know, it gave me this next, and then it gave me this, and I'm just like, you see, now I'm washed out as well. It's like, at which point I was just like, never mind. So maybe I'll come back to that when I can actually be bothered to, you know, again, the AI can't really do the details. I was just seeing if I could just like, if it can like get it first try, then we're happy. But if it can't, I just wasn't going to waste too much time on that idea. Maybe I think like, yeah, maybe there's other ways to do it. I'll probably have a look at this properly at some point. So if Martin's watching, you know, so I'll have another go maybe at some point. But I don't want to spend the rest of the afternoon on that today, on the day after my birthday. Anyway, if you're interested in this stuff, squares.tv/discord, come and join. Thanks for watching. Hope you found that interesting. If you're a technical person, maybe you found something, you learned something new. If you're interested in AI development, maybe that gave you some insights into that. But yeah, basically, I'm quite excited to do some test runs with guest mode. So let me know if you fancy doing an on-camera chat, so I can sort of see if it works, knowing that it may or may not record properly, right? So if you want to like have a chat, I don't know if it will necessarily work. So I think that would be quite fun to kind of test together. Maybe I can like tweak it and see if I can get it working properly as we go. So if you've got like a couple of hours to spare, maybe we can, so just find me on Discord and go from there. Thanks for watching. See you next time.